From Geppetto Studios in New Freedom, Pennsylvania, welcome to the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast, your home for inclusive, positive geek culture, where we talk about movies, comics, music, books, and whatever else we feel like. Please welcome your host.
Why should I care about what he has to say when there's a microphone in front of him, whether he's singing or not?
Ice, ice, baby.
Brad Mendenhall.
Hey kids, it is episode 275 of the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast. It is 8 years to the day since we started. To celebrate, two of our original contributors, Shawn Reynolds and Burdick, are here. We talk about performers we think should be bigger, and others we think have no business being as popular as they are. Anywho, Chris Maverick from the Vox Popcast is here to discuss breaking news. Before I let you go, this never happens, but there's actually breaking news that I want to throw at you.
Okay.
Adult Swim has made an announcement.
Oh, yes. Oh, God. Justin Bolt. Yeah.
They announced that Adult Swim has ended its association with Justin Roiland.
Yes.
Rick and Morty will continue.
Uh-huh.
The talented and dedicated crew are hard at work in season 7. So, the voice of Rick and Morty and the co-creator of Rick and Morty,
he's out.
No longer associated with Rick and Morty.
And this is sort of what we've been talking about, right? Like, Kanye has the power that there's no Kanye without Kanye. I think there can be I think there can be a Rick and Morty without Justin Roiland. Yeah, he's been the voice of those characters since the beginning, and he created them or co-created them. He had I guess I don't know how much. Have you talked about it on your show at all? Like he is being investigated for like domestic battery,
domestic abuse,
false imprisonment. Like the situation was untenable, I think. So bye. Like I don't know how else to say that. Like just he can't stay. And if the show's going to survive, they had to get rid of him.
And it's not a one and done thing. It's not something where there's believable deniability or he said, she said. Go on to Twitter.
Yeah.
Search for the hashtag Justin Roiland, and so many women in the entertainment field or in the entertainment journalism field will share screenshots of direct messages that he sent. And he couldn't sound any more like a rage-filled incel.
So yeah, he's gone, and that happened earlier. It was actually a colleague of mine is a big fan of the show and uses it for teaching. It had become uncomfortable to even be a Rick and. I mean, there's always been an element of Rick and Morty that there are some fans that are somewhat undesirable in their particular ideologies. There's an element that the show has always attracted that's not great.
People who don't really get the second layer of the show.
Yes. There's also, it was very clever and it was very interesting. And it had become as these allegations have come to light over the last couple of months, it had become more and more just really hard. It had just become hard to, and I'm not a huge fan of Rick and Morty. It's fine. I've seen it. It's funny, but I'm not a every week I got to watch Rick and Morty. What do I do until the next episode comes out kind of guy. I think it's kind of funny, and it had become tough. I get it. It had just become real tough. So
well, when Dan Harmon is your least problematic co-creator, you got a problem.
I guess it's not an issue anymore. I'm sure he'll fight it, but I don't think they're not going to be working with him anymore. And so I don't know that Justin Roiland is somebody who can work his way. Like, I don't think he's a Mel Gibson. I don't think he's a Kanye West. I think we're probably done with hearing projects of his, unless you're going to be looking like maybe he can be embraced by the alt-right or something. But yeah, I don't think he'll be just kind of rolling back into the redemption tour anytime soon.
Well, I remember talking with Scott Corelli from Dueling Genre about Joss Whedon And I said, it was like, what can Joss Whedon do? He's like, well,
He could enjoy his millions and be done.
he couldn't see how Joss Whedon would be given another movie or another TV show. He's like, he's now going to be a script doctor. You can have him work on a script, hammer it out, and improve it, but don't put his name on it. Which is, you can make good money and live very well the rest of your life doing that.
He doesn't need the money. First off, Joss is very wealthy. Joss does not need to work if he doesn't want to. I think it's possible Joss makes a comeback given enough time, and it will always be problematic and it will be hard. What helps is being behind the camera entirely.
But I can see Roiland doing the same thing, being the guy that they go to behind the scenes. Is like they're working on this project, and it's like, okay, he'll be an uncredited producer with no name value. But I think that's the most you can do, because you're right, he's not a name.
Yeah.
And there's just so many stories. I think it's just going to be a deluge. As much as people like Rick and Morty, it wasn't Friends. It's a cult thing.
Right. And there aren't enough people who are willing to die on the Rick and Morty train. There's some people, but there's not enough. There's 10 episodes a year, and not even every year.
Yeah, every 18 months maybe.
I don't have real thoughts on it. Like, I haven't. This happened. I did see the blurb come up earlier today when it happened, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I get it. I get why they did that. I would have fired him too.
This is a special episode for me, because when I started this show, the first people I contacted was Jarf, and then Shawn, and then Tim Burdick. I've always wanted to get all four of us together. Sadly, Jarf is unable to join us, but I was able to get Shawn and Tim together. Now, in the green room, Tim and I were talking, and Tim reminded me, we have been on one episode before.
I was thinking back, Shawn, to when we probably first met. Brad had a series of episodes like, I don't know, Battle of the 90s.
Yes, I was wondering if that was you. Yes, I do. Yes.
I got roped in to be the judge. You presented this case for like the Lemonheads, and then Brad presented like Matthew Sweet, and I loved both of them. And I don't want to say I was flipping coins there, but then I was like, oh, we got through that episode and everybody's still talking to everybody. That's great. And then the episode died in some kind of technical process, and we had to do it again. And oh my God, yeah, that was stressful for me. I'm hoping everybody healed from that, but yeah.
Girlfriend versus Shame About Ray.
So that was you. That was the judge for both recordings?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because I did feel a little stung, a little bit. And then if I felt stung, then I have to think that I was probably getting defensive, which means then, I don't know.
I don't know. You had a special phrase where you were like, "I'm smelling some home cooking" or something.
Oh God, I forgot that. Couple funny things. Tim and I have seen both Matthew Sweet and the Lemonheads in concert. Shawn, you don't go to a lot of concerts, first off.
Not anymore, right? Yeah.
I remember you sort of being not the easiest person to drag to shows.
Well,
you don't like people, first off.
I went to a lot of shows back in the day, but I think when you and I were friends, I was coming out of that, I guess. But I was, to be quite frank and honest and funny and sad, as I just wanted to focus on drinking, I think. I don't know. And I didn't want to deal with traffic. I didn't want to deal with parking lots, and I didn't want to deal with people.
Well, especially the shows, because we weren't interested in seeing... And this isn't meant to be disparaging, but you and I weren't interested to go see Rush or Springsteen or anything like that. And By the way, I've seen Rush in concert, and I would love to see Springsteen in concert, but that's not. We were definitely in our alternative radio guy who might fill up a 500-seat venue phase. Those concerts are in the worst parts of the worst towns.
My favorite club was 930 Club, and they're in D.C., and it used to be on H Street or 16th Street, something like that. I know it moved, but yeah, that was a rough part of town, man. There were rats bigger than cats in that area. Not to mention, we would always get lost driving around.
Oh, yeah, there was no parking. You couldn't find parking, and I remember you, me, and your roommate at the time went and saw Lloyd Cole in D.C.
That was fantastic, yeah.
Great show. Terrible neighborhood. Very small venue. And we had to find parallel. There was no parking lots nearby. We had to parallel park pretty far away from the venue. And we're walking to it. 3 fresh-faced 20-somethings. And I remember saying, it's like, we were not in a good part of town. Is there any way that we could look less intimidating? And I believe it was either you or your roommate said, it's like, well, we could try skipping.
Right.
Shawn, have you seen the Lemonheads in concert?
Yes. Well, yes. Actually, just a couple of years ago. But it's Evan Dando, right? And I saw Evan Dando when I lived in Baltimore. I did see Evan Dando in Fells Point as well. Fletcher's, if you remember Fletcher's.
I remember Fletcher's.
Yeah, I saw him there as well. So I've seen him twice. Just enjoyed the heck out of both shows.
Stop me if I'm wrong. When you saw him in Fletcher's, it was Evan Dando. And he was doing a lot of covers, and he was drinking like crazy during the show. And it was just like an acoustic set.
Yes, it was just an acoustic set. And it was it was just, that's, to me, is when he's in his element, when he's in singer-songwriter mode. But like I said, I just saw him again a couple of years ago. Actually, longer than that, because I remember it was before COVID. And it was a normal, he had a backing band, a la Lemonheads.
That's when he says he's the Lemonheads and he does Lemonhead songs. Because that's when Tim and I saw him, was like maybe 6 years ago.
Yeah.
He was the Lemonheads too, and it was just Evan Dando, but he did Shame About Ray and Into Your Arms. And it's weird to call Lemonheads hits, but definitely they're the songs that got the most college radio play.
Sure. And have stood the test of time too, as well.
I thought I heard right now that Evan Dando and Juliana Hatfield, they were reforming and going to do, or they're out right now, or in the last year, they were doing a tour where they were just playing It's a Shame About Ray.
Yeah. He's playing, actually, he just finished up the tour, but he was playing It's a Shame About Ray in its entirety for the first set, and then come back and do like a miscellaneous things. But he did have Juliana Hatfield. I want to say Boston, but that's probably just a safe go-to since they're both from Boston. But she wasn't there for the whole tour, but she was there for some shows, from what I understand.
So weird, because we're all at the age where all those albums that were so formative for us, they're now 30 plus years old. They're doing the nostalgia tours, because I saw Matthew Sweet do the Girlfriend from Start to Finish tour. I was always a fan of Eric Johnson, and he did Avaya Musicom Start to Finish. I saw that show. It's sort of weird, because it's definitely it's bringing out the nostalgia babies for those shows. And also you hear them talk, and Matthew Sweet, when he did that, he would do songs that he says, he's like, I don't think I've ever played this song in concert. U2 did that for one of their albums. They did a start to finish tour before the pandemic. I know whatever album it was the one that had Red Hill Mining Town, and it was revealed it was the first time that was a hit for them, and they never played it in concert before. It's sort of neat to see that. It's like it's your only chance sometimes to see some of those lesser known songs performed live.
And there's always interesting stories behind why they do not play some songs. Sometimes far more interesting than the stories that become hits, right? I'm trying to think of an example and I can't, but I know absolutely, Rush had something, and it's usually a technical reason why they couldn't necessarily do the song that they did in the studio. But do you know why Matthew Sweet didn't want to do that song?
I don't know if it was that he didn't want to do a particular song. Matthew Sweet put out a lot of music in a pretty short period of time. Between Girlfriend, Altered Beast, and 100% Fun, he had enough. Again, you don't want to say hits, because really Matthew Sweet had 2.5 hit songs, but he had enough songs that his fans wanted to hear where he didn't need to dive that deep. So he could do Girlfriend, Ugly Truth, Sick of Myself, I've Been Waiting, and then 2-3 songs off the new album, and you have pretty close to a full set. So I get that. I mean, with U2 just has such a huge catalog of hit songs. I guess they just decided not to go back to Red Hill Mining Town for whatever reason. It's just weird that they never played it live. I will say, I do know, and I've talked about this on and off with this song, and you guys are two of the first people to know that I was going on this particular adventure where during the pandemic, me and some friends started playing out, and we're just a little dinky cover band, but you do have to think, it's like, oh, I didn't realize these two songs that we like to play have very similar chord progressions, and we can't play them anywhere near each other because everyone will realize that's pretty much the same song you just sang.
Did you? This is so relevant. I don't know if I want to explain why it's relevant, but just out of curiosity, now that you played a couple open mics yourself with your band, have you considered that in your song choice and your song order? Like, oh, you know what? These are the same chords. I don't want everybody to catch on. I just picked two songs with the same chord progression.
Yes.
You have? Okay.
Two of the songs is the song Circles, Soul Coughing song Circle, and then we do that song, and then we also do the song Good by Better Than Ezra. And it turns out it's the exact same chord progression for the verse and the chorus, except for you capo the song on the second string. I was like, well, we can't do those songs anywhere near each other because it's pretty much the same song.
But you know, I don't think anybody would really notice. I mean, but obviously you're always having that fear. I wonder how much that happens at the U2 level, right? Where they're like, I don't want people to catch on that this is the same exact song. I just use a different pedal, or something like that. That'd be neat to learn about. But the reality is probably nobody would notice.
Yeah, Shawn, you and I have our Ryan Adams fandom, which isn't the easiest thing to admit because Ryan Adams.
Yeah.
But he definitely has his tricks that you go. And there's a thing where I remember I had a guitar instructor years ago. It's like when you rip yourself off, it's style.
And that's your John Fogerty, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's style. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But there were two songs that I remember specifically, and I think you and I even talked about it on the show, where he had a song, a pretty popular song of his, Dance All Night, that started with a harmonica solo. And then there was a song that came out of one of his later albums that had almost the exact same harmonica solo. And it was played over, his sort of signature lush acoustic guitars with the capo on the third string to have that sort of neat jangly sound. It's the first 20 seconds of these songs are practically identical. People will pick up on it. I've been to enough open mics and stuff. Sometimes people play around with it where the romantic song, What I Like About You, is pretty much structurally the exact same song as John Mellencamp's Rockin' in the USA.
Yeah, I can hear it. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Basically the same song as Rockin' in the USA. And I saw a guy perform that song at an open mic, and it just went from one song to the next. I was like, oh, that's sort of clever.
It's also interesting when it happens to two different artists. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm shoehorning this in. But real quickly, that happened several years ago with Chili Peppers. With, I don't know, it's one of their 2000 songs about California, where they were being accused of ripping off Tom Petty's Last Dance with Mary Jane. Do you remember that?
I remember it a little bit.
And Tom Petty was very, very non-Tom Petty, because he's usually a no-nonsense guy, and said, you know what? Sometimes it just happens, right? It just happens that songs sound similar. It doesn't mean that one ripped off the other. I will say the common denominator between those two was Rick Rubin, so I have to wonder, but I don't know.
Well, again, but that ends up being the same thing, style.
When it comes to songwriting and music, I don't know who said it. I know it's been said. We're all ripping off each other, right? We really are. That's how you learn to play. That's how you learn to write, by mimicking others. I'm not saying outright steal, but you know,
Well, there's a limited amount of chord progressions.
yes, and there's only so many frets, right? And there's only so many strum patterns, right? I mean,
Tim, do you remember when we were in college? It was sort of the end of the Rolling Stones putting out new music, because the Rolling Stones are a legacy band and people would just tolerate the new music that they would play in concert so they could get to Honky Tonk Woman. Tim, do you remember the song Has Anybody Seen My Baby by the Stones?
Yes, that was that one where they had Angelina Jolie as the video in it or something.
Yeah, it was a weird video. I mean, whatever. Videos are supposed to be sort of weird, where you would have the Stones playing this fine song, and the video was giant people walking through town, and they were all models, male and female models, including Angelina Jolie before she was Angelina Jolie. Completely nothing song. The Stones haven't had a hit song since the mid 80s, and even those were sort of reaching.
You're being very generous, but yes.
I sort of like the Stones song, what was it? Mixed Emotions. Kind of a hit.
yeah, that's all right.
It's not one of their iconic songs. But that song, Has Anybody Seen My Baby, which is such a clunky, ugly title, Keith Richards was playing that in his kitchen before the album was released, and his daughter walked in. First, she was just probably shocked. She's like, I can't believe I'm Keith Richards' daughter and I'm seeing him and he's still alive, because, geez, Keith Richards. But then she heard the song and she started singing the tune and the lyrics to the Katie Lang song, Constant Craving. Keith Richards, who's a savvy businessman, the Stones are. We like to think of them being addled and drunkards and coked up and all that, because they are. But they were smart businessmen on top of that. Keith Richards, who wasn't even familiar with the song, but just wondered if there could have been a little bit of cultural osmosis, because that was Constant Cravings was a big song. He ended up calling Mick and calling their agents and their lawyers, and then Katie Lang ended up getting a writing credit on the song because they just didn't want to get sued.
Yeah, that happens. I think it just happens. So did Kurt Cobain purposely rip off Boston with Teen Spirit and What a Feeling?
I mean, didn't he say he did?
Did he say he did? Oh, and let's not forget, he ripped off Killing Joke, too, right? With Come As You Are. Did he? I mean, I don't know. I never heard him say it. Like, I know that he would, when that song first came out, and I'm not one of these, I'm a passive fan when it comes to Nirvana. I can take it or leave it. But I do remember when that song came out, and I thought it was a band called the Young Gods. I don't know if you remember the Young Gods, but they were heavily into sampling, trying to make that industrial sound. And that's who I thought it was. I thought they took the riff from What a Feeling, sampled it and looped it or something. I don't know. But I do know that later on, and I couldn't convince anybody that Nirvana was ripping off Boston, right? I'm like, am I the only one that hears this? I think he would do it as a joke in his shows and start singing What a Feeling, and then before going in, this smells like Teen Spirit. But did he ever actually admit it?
Cobain was so weird and so cheeky and such a smartass in interviews.
Or was it just osmosis? Was it a coincidence? Maybe the record got out the door and he was like, "Oh crap, that does sound." I don't. Did anybody raise their hand in the studio? Like, dude, this sounds like Boston.
Well, maybe, but they probably figured nobody would care. They didn't know that his album was going to blow up.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
it's sort of like the thing when it go in a completely different direction. Vanilla Ice, when he put out Ice Baby. And he sampled Queen and David Bowie. Afterwards, he was trying to backtrack. He's like, oh, well, it's sort of different. And then, of course, no, it wasn't. And then they paid up. But if Ice Baby would have played in 5 LA clubs, nobody would have given a crap. But then it became a huge song. And that's when the Jackals come out for their cut. Now, rightfully, because all that song really is, without that awesome bass riff, that song's nothing.
Yeah, it's absolute yeah. Well, it is garbage anyway, but that you can't make a case for osmosis. It's blatant. I think that was my question: is the Smell Like Teen Spirit just osmosis, where it's just cut from the same cloth? Unlike Come As You Are, where he did blatantly rip off Killing Joke, but my thought was he thought nobody would even know who the hell Killing Joke was.
He didn't think anyone would know who Killing Joke was, and he didn't think anyone would know who Nirvana was.
There's no excuse.
We forget, because Nirvana was the biggest thing in the world, but there was no indication they were going to be.
No, that's true.
They put out a couple albums that I think were sort of well received critically and got a little bit of alternative radio love, but they didn't write hits. They didn't go for the hits. They weren't photogenic. They weren't good interviews. They hated playing the game. So they were just going to be the Pixies.
Maybe less than that. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was their ceiling, was the Pixies. But it turns out that all that FU attitude, everyone being really, really tired of overproduced music, and that song having the great music video, Smells Like Teen Spirit would still be a good song regardless of when it came out. But if it came out 2 years earlier or 2 years later, it would be lucky to be White Stripes Fell in Love with a Girl.
If that, it would have just been underground, right? But I don't know. It was well produced, especially compared to Bleach. That's funnier.
It helps that it has the goods. That ties into. We've been talking for 20 minutes and we haven't even gotten to what we're going to talk about.
That's what I was going to say. This is the funny thing. This absolutely has nothing to do with what we're talking about today, right?
But it ties into the reason I convened us other than just I thought it'd be fun for the three of us to have a conversation is talking about acts, be it music, novelists, actors, TV, whatever it is, whatever the creative force it is, are bigger than we think is reasonable or that we thought should have been bigger. And Tim, you have a list.
I have a list where it's like there's like this group of people, like what happened to them, and then there's this other half of a list of people that they had their moment or they've had some moments, and I just feel that they should be way bigger.
Well, where was this list? This is like the one time I couldn't prepare for an episode because I had no idea which direction we were going.
Oh, Tim will provide enough list for all of us.
Okay, so I do want to hear it, but I want to take a guess. Oh, I would like Brad to take a guess as well for Tim and myself. Let's go with, since we were talking about music first.
Okay.
I would like to, and Tim, unfortunately, I can't take a guess for you, but I could take a guess for Brad. Your artists that you think should have been bigger than they were.
Okay, go ahead. Take a guess.
Chris Whitley.
Oh.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Shawn. I would definitely have said that Brad started the GoFund movement for the Chris Whitley statue somewhere or the Rock Hall of Fame. But yeah. So was that wasn't who you were thinking of? Or you haven't really thought about it yet?
With Chris Whitley, listen, I think they should be teaching his albums in music theory classes all across America. I think there should be a chapter in All-American history books about the importance of his music. For me, because I just think he's that brilliant. I also understand that part of what makes Chris Whitley work is he wasn't very good at playing the game. He would buck conventions, and it would be like it seemed like there were some times where when music seemed to be going in his direction, that's when he would change. While I think his music was so good, but I also understand it's like, his music was great, but he wasn't very well suited to being a superstar. He and being that top tier, because there's a weird sort of responsibility and game playing that has to go with it. And I think he was actually probably, and I was lucky enough, I talked with Chris's brother Daniel a little bit about Chris's career on episode years ago. Dan Whitley said, it's like, Chris actually had a nicer career than you would think because he made a living being a musician. He made the music he wanted to make. He was living in New York, which is the most expensive city in the world, and he was able to live comfortably there. He sort of seemed happy where he was. Some performers sort of steer away from the fame or aren't well suited for it. Part of me is like, yeah, it's a shame. Chris Whitley was so much more talented and made so much better music than other acts that I find vastly inferior to him. But yeah, I don't think Chris Whitley could be anything other than what he was. He had to be sort of a niche act.
So what's his aspirations? Was just to be the singer-songwriter guy on the road, a la Townes Van Zandt, who, was sort of like the musical St. Francis, if you will. He didn't really have a desire to be wealthy or anything. Or did Chris Whitley, and did he have aspirations to be bigger than he was?
God, and it was one of the coolest moments I can remember. I was in Towson, Maryland, in front of the Recker Theater, which was a nice, smallish music venue. Government Mule was going to play there. Chris Whitley was going to open for them. And I was walking by beforehand. I was going to get a drink at the place next door. And as I was walking by the Recker, sitting in front, reading a book, was Chris Whitley. And I actually stopped, and I was like, holy crap, is that Chris Whitley? And I stopped and said, Mr. Whitley. And he looked a little, not irritated, but definitely like, oh crap, I didn't think, and he literally said, it's like, I didn't think anyone would recognize me because I'm the opener. I was like, oh, sorry. And I talked with him for a little bit. He was very nice. And he had just put out his first solo acoustic album, Scrapyard Lullaby, which was like a one-man, he like recorded it in a barn. And I remember him saying, yeah, it would be nice to sign, I hope to sign with a big label so I can do a big album later. So he was happy with the music he did, but he also knew that to do certain music, he would need different backing. So it sort of seemed like he was happy to make the music he made, but realizing that if he wanted to do something different, he would need to get different backing. It definitely seemed like he would do whatever he needed to make the music he wanted to. I would have loved to, and maybe this is where he would have been cool, and where I would have liked to see him get bigger. He would have made a great music producer and a great songwriter. That could have been cool, like Mutt Lange or Rick Rubin or whoever, Don Was. Very talented people who were good at giving other artists an interesting edge or an interesting spin on their music, but almost using Def Leppard, Johnny Cash, whoever, to sort of merge and give them edge while also cutting their own to edginess. But there's a whole series. There's a bunch of musicians, and Evan Dando's one of them now. Evan Dando, Marshall Crenshaw, Dave Alvin, guys who they don't make hits. They don't move the needle culturally, but they make a nice living for themselves, going from small venue to small venue all around the country, and people go and see them every year. And Chris Whitley, I think that's what he was aspiring to be. I think towards the end of his career, the venues were getting smaller and he wasn't packing them as well. I think that had to do with there was the health issues he was facing at the time.
You got me rich cause I'm cleaning on wealthy. Sitting in the kitchen with your friend in the deli. Hey, walking down the street looking deadly. Pouring up the sauce coming family. You know you got the envy. Getting up the snack at the pantry. With the clean peas on the brandy. Looking all fancy. Getting all fancy. Got a little whip and it's made. I stick it to the candy. I gotta give a lot of the credit to Phoenix Studios. He's a real G, man. He gave me the idea for a lot of this. He didn't actually produce it, but he did help. Gotta give my man some credit. That's all I gotta say.
So it doesn't sound like that was your choice coming in. What was your choice coming in? And then I want to get to Tim's list.
For me, Pete Yorn.
Nice choice. Nice choice.
Tim, how familiar are you with Pete Yorn?
I remember you introduced him to me because I think I listened to one of your podcasts. So, I'm sorry, but I only know Pete Yorn through doing a song like on the Shrek 2 soundtrack. But then, after listening to your podcast, there was like something like Sounds Like Summer or whatever. So, I know a couple albums, but not so much.
Oh, that's right. We did an episode on Pete Yorn's album. Two albums we've done it.
Yeah, because he did a cover album a little while ago. In years before, he put out a really good. He should be bigger because, and it's funny. The reason, Shawn, it took me a while to convince you to listen to Pete Yorn because you just thought he was going to be like a pretty boy version of Evan Dando, an even prettier Evan Dando.
Yeah, but you're So Tim, he also turned me on to Pete Yorn as well. I was still living in Baltimore, so it had to be 20 plus years ago. But yeah, I clearly remember going to my apartment in my Cherokee, my Jeep Cherokee. I don't know why. I can just clearly see myself in the car listening to that first album. I don't think it took me that long actually to latch on to Pete Yorn. Sometimes it does take me a couple listens. I mean, it's not like Ryan Adams where it took many, many years for me to finally get it. But Pete Yorn, I remember liking him pretty early on because of you, though.
No, but with Pete Yorn, it was a thing where good-looking guy, good interview, good music, catchy stuff, good videos. Also, he's dialed into... I mean, this is a guy who's recorded 2 albums with Scarlett Johansson. He's somebody who's like known and respected in the industry. He's been on big soundtracks because he did sort of have a good size hit song with that's the Shrek soundtrack. Yeah, I remember a couple of times where like watching a trailer for like an ad before a movie in the theaters, and that took place in a recording studio, and there was a guy wearing a Pete Yorn shirt, like weird stuff. Like people in that world were Pete Yorn fans. He should have been bigger. Now, Shawn, for you, I'm trying to think of. Someone recently has talked about. You really think Wet Leg should be big?
No, that's not who I was thinking of, though. And they don't have enough a catalog to justify me putting them in that bucket. And I feel like they've had a fair amount of success, I think, this year. Second guess?
I don't know.
Joseph Arthur.
Oh, God.
Yeah, Joseph Arthur. And I would have thought that you would have guessed Lloyd Cole or Paul Westerberg, who are both brilliant songwriters and one of my favorite songwriters. But I feel like they've each achieved a certain amount of success. But Joseph Arthur...
Paul Westerberg in a small area is a god.
Yeah. I never felt like he belongs. He belongs in that stratosphere with Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen and Townes Van Zandt. I believe he belongs in that stratosphere, Paul Westerberg. But no, I was thinking Joseph Arthur. I feel like Joseph Arthur is worthy of more success than he's gotten.
Here's the thing about Westerberg. Rolling Stone just put out their greatest 200 singers of all time.
Yeah, I was waiting for that to come.
Westerberg was like 196 or 195?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, there's some heavy hitters that didn't make that list at all.
Are we going to have the Celine Dion debate now?
Yeah, because she didn't make the list, right? That's been the rub.
I don't know. There was a big news article. We heard about it over here, so that's the only thing I know about this list.
The list is really just meant to generate conversation and publicity for Rolling Stone, which that's exactly what it did. Yeah, does Westerberg have a great voice? Absolutely not. Sometimes it sounds like swallowing gravel, but it's unique. Yes.
But he's a great singer. He uses that tool very well.
I don't know. It would have ever occurred to me to put him in a list of the top singers, though. I don't know. I mean, I love him as a singer, but I don't know. I guess I think of the Celine Dion's when you put together a list like great singers.
It's the difference between great singers and great voices.
There is a difference, yeah.
Because Bob Dylan was in the top 10.
He's on the list? He's in the top 10?
Yeah.
Well, shit, I could have made the list then. But I love Bob Dylan, but I'm not kidding myself. He has a terrible voice, right?
Terrible voice, great singer.
Yes, okay.
He knows how to use that voice as a tool to tell the story of his music better than Mariah Carey, who probably has one of the best voices in the history of music. Mariah Carey, though, and your mileage may vary, while she has a beautiful voice, I don't believe a single thing she ever sings. because she doesn't use that voice to tell the story as well as Bob Dylan and Paul Westerberg. Listen, if I'm going to going to a Christmas concert, at the local church, I definitely want Mariah Carey and Celine Dion in the choir, and Bob Dylan can shut the hell up in the back row. But if I'm going to, but who can do a better job singing Tangled Up in Blue? Nobody sings that song as well as Bob Dylan. And there have been people with much better voices who have sung that song, and it just sounds like sort of a fun karaoke night, as opposed to Bob Dylan when he sings Idiot Wind, Tangled Up in Blue, You're Gonna Make Me Lonesome When You Go. Every word he says, I believe it. But it's definitely something that's going to piss people off, because, God, you just hear Bob Dylan talk. It's like, what is this?
I feel bad for saying it, because I do love Bob Dylan. Really do. And I like unique sounding voices. Sometimes the worse, the better.
Going back to your point, Joseph Arthur, I completely agree. The song Even Though should be an anthem.
He's got so many songs that fit that category, right? I don't understand it. I don't understand why the American public has never heard Joseph Arthur or latched on. And by the way, I just counted to get ready for this episode. He's got 25 freaking albums. He's quite prolific. And he's not it's not like he's old dude.
He's in his early 50s.
Is he? Okay, yeah.
Well, Tim, you know Joseph Arthur. Yeah, I think you and I have talked about.
I'm sure we've talked about him, and I'm sure I'm going to just be totally embarrassed, because I'm probably going to go off this and then go to YouTube and play some things and be like, this is Joseph Arthur.
But don't feel bad. Don't be embarrassed. I mean, nobody is heard. I mean, that's the point, right? I don't understand. And he's had major label backing at one time. I think in the musicians world, he's quite well respected. He was friends with Lou Reed. Peter Gabriel produced his first or second album. So yeah, I think he's respected, but I think outside of that music circle, not many people know who he is. And I don't get it. The dude is super talented and does very interesting stuff. So yeah, check him out. I would love to be in your shoes to just start off, because there's so much of a catalog to dive into. You're not going to run out for a very long time, right? So you got 25 albums to choose from. I would suggest if there's one you don't like, just try the next one, because he does change up he does try different things with different albums.
There'd be 26, but they have an unreleased album because he said dumb stuff about COVID.
First of all, I do want to clarify the 25 albums. So he is prolific, but he's not like Ryan Adams, not prolific in that manner. Like Ryan Adams would just take a bunch of drugs and stay up all night and record an album in 8 hours. Whereas Joseph Arthur doesn't do that. I mean, you definitely tell these songs got some weight behind them and some effort behind it.
So Tim, start us with your list, because I think you prepared more than the rest of us. It's like, who's the first name that pops out on you? Someone that you thought would be bigger.
Well, I guess the thing is like maybe Juliana Hatfield. She was somebody who I listened to in college, and Hey Babe, Only Everything. I heard some of her first albums, not in the States, but I heard like her first album, Hey Babe. I heard it when I was like studying abroad in England. That album was going nuts on the BBC charts. And then I come back, and 3 years later, I practically run up to, I think I had a friend go to Penn State for me and get Only Everything. And then like, she just dropped off the radar for me, or I was traveling too much, and there were other albums like Bed and Beautiful Creature. I just don't know what happened to her. And I know she's kind of had a comeback a little bit recently with like her singing cover stuff of like Olivia Newton-John and the Police. But I read her biography, or I think, Brad, you made me aware that she had something, and it sounded like mental issues got in the way of her career, or she just didn't want to be a part of the machine or something. And she is super prolific. I don't know if she's Arthur prolific, but she just keeps cranking out the stuff she wants to do. So she's got lots.
Totally agreed. A good choice, by the way. She's completely underrated and deserves some kind of success. Like I remember just reading a couple of years ago, she was struggling financially. I think she was trying to auction off a letter from, I don't know, Kurt Cobain or something like that. And she caught a lot of slack for that for trying to cash in. It breaks my heart to see someone like Juliana Hatfield struggling, right, financially. And same with Joseph Arthur. I'm like, these people are super talented and do super great music. I just want them to be able to make a living. I don't want them to suffer. Speaking of the covers, I do love that album that she did with Olivia Newton-John songs a couple of years ago.
I didn't even know about that.
Oh my God, I love it. I absolutely love it. She doesn't do anything different or earth-shattering with it. She's pretty true to the original, but it's just fantastic. I love it.
It hasn't been that long since Olivia Newton-John passed away. Part of me wants to say is like that's somebody who got bigger than she ever should have been, because while she was very pretty, she was not a very good actress. A completely fine singer, but definitely seemed to be almost the opposite of Juliana Hatfield, where Olivia Newton-John was somebody where they put her in a studio, they said sing these 10 songs, and she sang them. And she was completely fine, but she didn't have an interesting personality. She was very pretty, but there wasn't like a real musical idea behind her. It was just, all right, sing country songs this time. Oh, now sing disco. Okay, now sing pop music, whatever. But she had a couple of good songs, and I just looked up that Juliana sings Olivia Newton-John, and she sings Magic. Please tell me that's a good song.
It is. It is a good song. I think Olivia Newton-John has far more hits than I think most people realize. You have to sit down and think about it for a moment. But Olivia Newton-John has had some hits. I mean, maybe they weren't cool when we were little, but when your mom was listening to the 8-track. But
well, Magic is a really good song. That is a really good song. So good. And it was from the Xanadu soundtrack. That movie was a bomb. But that song was so good.
I am ready to step up and fight people to defend that movie because I rented it from the library this summer out of boredom. I have to say that, oh yes, there are some moments. Who was in that totally... Gene Kelly. That was Gene Kelly's last movie. So anytime you could see Gene Kelly on roller skates and still looking cool. I mean, he is still working the shit in that movie. You got to give props. I will make pilgrimages to celebrate that.
there was another hit from that movie. Do you remember?
Well, Xanadu itself, the title track.
Yes, Xanadu itself. But true story, my first 45 that I bought with my allowance. Actually, I bought two 45s at the same time. One was the Safety Dance. Who was that? Men Without Hats, right? At the time that came out.
Bold choice, good.
Well, at the time it came out, it was so different. It was so weird. And the second one, I thought I was buying the Xanadu 45 of Olivia Newton-John, but I actually bought ELO's song, I'm Alive, which was also a single off the movie. But it had the giant Xanadu logo on the label. So I thought that was the song. And I ended up buying ELO by an accident. But anyway, yeah, true. That was my first 45. Was not even the 45 I wanted to buy. There you go. 6 Degrees of Olivia Newton-John.
Well, here's the thing with Xanadu. It's a movie that doesn't get made anymore because the budget for it was $20-some million in 1980s money. That's a big budget movie for the era.
Yeah.
So a big budget musical starring Olivia Newton-John and Gene Kelly, who was way past his box office peak, doing a roller skate musical. Nobody makes that movie anymore. That movie does not get to theaters. And we've talked about it before, and I'm certainly not the first person to address this. We are in an era where the only movies that get made are existing IPs or comic book films or the sixth iteration of Jurassic Park, and nobody takes insane big swings anymore. And that was an insane big swing. Listen, I want Marvel to still make movies, and DC, I guess, can if they want. And if you can't got a really good director with an interesting concept, fine, make another dinosaur movie. I don't care. But I would love for some coked out music video director with a great idea who, between bumps, was able to convince a movie studio executive to sign off on $60 million for. It's like, all right, we're gonna get Christina Aguilera. Wait for it. We're gonna put everybody on roller skates, and then we're gonna have Ben Vereen talking to her, and they're gonna fall in love with the end. They're gonna sing really great, catchy, crappy songs, and go ahead. Your turn for the next snort. Go ahead. I want to see that movie. It doesn't get made anymore. Movies are so much safer, and there's a sameness. The show that we're on got started to talk about the movies of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I obviously lugged those films, but I would like it better if they were one thing that was out there among 20 things, and let 2 of the 20 things be absolute batshit crazy.
We got off track, but I did want to come back to 2 things on Juliana Hatfield. One, her book was pretty good, you said?
It was a good read, frankly. She was not afraid. She wasn't trying to kiss her own ass or whatever. She kind of saying, sometimes I'm a bitch. I am not a nice person sometimes. I've got moods. Or, hey, I've done stupid things like date my drummers for some stupid ass reason. I've been in toxic relationships. So she has not been afraid to say, like, hey, not an angel and not a role poster person for Singer of the Year or whatever, but I give her credit because Juliana Hatfield wants to continue to be Juliana Hatfield in all its glory and guts. And I don't love every song, but every chapter of that book. But at the same time, I still, as an artist, respecting another artist, I'm kind of like, you go.
2 other things worthy mentioning of Juliana Hatfield is, one, she's an honorary Lemonheads member, right? Let's not forget she did backup on some songs for 2 albums. And I think I know she's primarily responsible for us probably getting our last album from Paul Westerberg for the I Don't Cares.
Yeah. I heard she was a big fan of his.
Yeah, she essentially went to his house and he had like crap loads of tapes of him just cranking out music. Apparently that's what he does every day. He gets up, has his coffee, goes downstairs to the basement and writes music and records it. And she was like, we got to put this out. We got to do something. So she's largely responsible for us getting that last out. I don't think we'll get another one, maybe until he dies. I don't want him to die, don't get me wrong. But there's no way we would have gotten that I Don't Cares album without her pushing Paul Westerberg to do it. Yeah, so kudos to her. She deserves to be heard for many reasons, not just for covering Olivia Newton-John. At least a decent living. Like I said, it just absolutely breaks my heart that somebody as talented and prolific as her. I mean, she has fans, right? But I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, the state that the music industry is in. I'm not saying that she needs to be the next Lady Gaga. I don't think that's who she is. And I'm not saying that everything she puts out should be number one. But I don't know. I just want her to be able to sustain happily, I guess.
Somebody should have picked up one of her songs and covered it. Like, she should be making secondary and tertiary incomes from not just her music, from not just selling her own albums, but from other people.
Yeah. And there's enough of the catalog to pull from, right? She's got a nice catalog to pull from.
There are dozens of people who became millionaires from the Bodyguard soundtrack.
Far less effort put into their music. How about that? Yeah.
Someday I'm Coming Back by Lisa Stansfield. People sort of remember Lisa Stansfield. She was a one-hit wonder. She had a song on that album. nobody bought that album for Lisa Stansfield. They bought it for I Will Always Love You. But because it was on that album, and that's when people bought albums, Lisa Stansfield made millions of dollars because she got a cut of every album sold. Dolly Parton made millions of dollars because she wrote that song.
That's a great example. Somebody quote, I mean, Dolly Parton's a star in her own right, no doubt about that. But they took a song that was not in the music listeners, and I don't know what the word is. You know what I mean? It just was nowhere near anybody's ears.
It was a nice hit song for Dolly Parton. It was sort of a country hit that got sung at some karaoke's, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then it became the biggest song on the planet
because of Whitney Houston. Yeah, because of Whitney Houston. Yeah.
Nick Lowe is a millionaire because he had the song "What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding" that he wrote. It was on that album. It made millions of dollars because it was on that album. That album sold 40 million copies or however much. You would feel like Juliana Hatfield, because she has so much good music and it's so many great non-hits, that somebody would pick up one of his songs and is like, oh, well, we got to fill out this Pink album. So have Pink do a lesser-known Juliana Hatfield. I'm trying to think of other rock acts, and there aren't a whole lot of rock acts anymore. But somebody else would pick up that song because albums need to have, 8 to 12 songs. And if you only have 6 to 8 songs that you of your own and you want to fill it out, you fill it out with Juliana Hatfield. She should be making money that way.
It would be nice if somebody took one of her songs and turned it into "I Will Always Love You" or something. You know what I mean? Just she's got some great songs. She's got a great catalog to pull from.
Tim, who do you have that you think is big and you don't really see it?
It's a tie right now because maybe Lana Del Rey and Miley Cyrus. Lana Del Rey, I mean, I've heard some of her stuff, but I just heard she married a record producer, and I know she looks good in the videos. So I know she has one really good produced album, but I haven't heard any other stuff that says, right, she's got talent.
This group of guys here, we're supposed to like Lana Del Rey.
Yeah, we are supposed to. I think that would fit in our forte. I agree.
She's very pretty without being a sex pot. She's that singer that it's okay to have a crush on because she's not trying to be, not wearing skin tight outfits. She just doesn't show how hard she works out, and she's not going to do a pictorial for Playboy. That was always a weird thing. If you're a guy who likes indie music, you can't say that you really like what female celebrity you have a crush on. You can't say Pamela Anderson or Jenny McCarthy because it's too on the nose and it makes you feel shallow. And her songs are deep theoretically, although it's sort of like, I don't know. I sort of get it like a James Blunt version of deep where it sort of sounds deep until you listen. It's like, hey, this song doesn't make any sense. And then she rightfully got roasted for being a crappy live performer from her work, from that performance on SNL. I'm not sure there's anything there. I've heard some of her music and it's fine. She's fine.
Is she in it for the long haul, or is this a stepping stone to more? It's just about being famous. And I don't know her well enough. Well, obviously I don't know her well as a person, but I don't know her well enough from her work. Yeah, so my question is, do we get the sense that she's in for the long haul? She truly is a musician, or is it a stepping stone to just being famous?
Once again, I don't know either. You're right. Maybe she just wants to make sure that she makes Vanity Fair's best dress list or Elle. She gets on a couple magazine covers every couple years or has her own fashion or shoe line. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know either, and I feel bad even raising the question, especially if there's Elena Deval fan listening and thinking that she's all that, but I just don't know. I don't know her well enough, other than what I see in the press.
She has an album coming out this year. She is pretty prolific.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. She's got 6 albums. Yeah, that's 5 more than I realized she had.
She hasn't done some of the. I mean, she's definitely been on plenty of magazine covers. She did that stupid ad for, I think, a perfume with Jared Leto.
Oh God.
Just seems so actorly and pretentious. But she's putting out the music, so she's not Jessica Simpson. Jessica Simpson, who put out a handful of albums, each one seemed to be chasing a trend. It's like, now it's going to be my country album. I was like, shut up. And then Jessica Simpson hasn't put out any music in 10 years because she has a brand now. So it's a Jessica Simpson clothing line or perfume line or whatever.
She just sang songs that were in front of. Yeah, that's a good example, right?
You see people, performers who do that, where their music career is just, well, here's a different way to look at it. When we were in college, Tim, that was when Dennis Leary, his album No Cure for Cancer came out. And that was a massive comedy album. And he blew up. And I think he did one more comedy album after that. But then he started acting. And he had TV shows. And then he would be in movies and whatever. And I think it became pretty clear that Dennis Leary wanted to be an actor. Doing stand-up comedy, ripping off other comedians, was his way to get enough exposure and to then do what he wanted to do. Jessica Simpson, credit given, it's something where, and they've talked about this, Jessica Simpson actually has a pretty good voice, but Jessica Simpson wasn't really passionate about music. She was a stage kid with a little bit of talent who was attractive, and then finding a way to keep her in the public eye, and she got enough name brand value that she does the next thing, and it's richer than we'll ever be. That just shows a lack of passion. Ice-T still makes music. Nobody cares about it anymore. But even though he has a good, comfortable job for the last 20 years being Detective Tutuola, he still makes music because he's passionate about music. I'm always suspicious of people, performers who, and be it in any field, where it's so easy for them to walk away from something that people would kill to do for a living. So Gwyneth Paltrow really gave up acting because she makes more money selling crappy products on her website.
I will say this, with what little I know of Lena Durrell, and it's probably not enough to form an opinion, but I will say it doesn't seem authentic. I think that's the word I was looking for when we talk about Jessica Simpson. It's not authentic. She's not she's not driven by music. And I think, it's just, when you see someone on magazine covers all the time in fashion, as you mentioned, Tim, I think that, you start to wonder, what is driving them. So your second choice is an interesting one, is America's Sweetheart, Miley Cyrus. So I'd love to hear about that. Is she in the same bucket as Lana Del Rey or a different one?
I think she's a little bit different. Well, I guess the thing is with Miley Cyrus, she was like a kid performer, or she was on maybe Disney Channel or something, and Party in the USA. And then I don't know if she just jumped on the crazy train or whatever, but she then felt, I got to do bigger, crazier, wilder things. And I don't know if that burned her out, or you can't maintain a career, or your sanity probably kind of keeping that momentum up, and you have to change gears, or can't keep an audience like that if you're just like, wow, what is she doing this one? Oh, she's partying with all her friends again.
She's dry humping someone on stage again. From what I see of her trajectory, it reminds me of Madonna, and that there's this phase where she's very learning about herself and her sexuality, and it's there for everybody to see, right? And I'm a strong, independent woman, daggum it, and that's why I show my boobs, not because whatever reasons you would have to show your boobs, I guess. But I asked you that question, and I asked it when I did, because although there are many times she doesn't come across as authentic, such as something shallow as Party in the USA, but she is incredibly talented, and she is at her core driven by music, I believe.
But there's also the thing that you said before about Jessica Simpson, where there's been times where she's just sung what's been put in front of her. Going back to Party in the USA, which is a catchy song.
It's hard to be in a bad mood after that song. Yeah, I agree.
She then talked about the song afterwards, and there was the one line, and it's sort of forced, where she talks about the music that's playing when she's partying. It's like, oh, the Jay-Z song is on.
It's a little forced. Yeah.
She wasn't a Jay-Z fan. She's like, I couldn't name a song by him.
That's sad to hear. So maybe there's, I think when I see the authenticism is when she's not trying so hard. I think when and I've seen like YouTube videos or clips, like she's I think during COVID, she was like doing a backyard concert and doing covers, and she did this fantastic cover of Jolene, Dolly Parton's sing. And that's when I really said, oh my gosh, this she actually knows what she's doing. She is talented. She's not just this person that writes terrible songs like Wrecking Ball, or somebody that just gets on stage. I don't know. Yeah, I'm flip-flopping here because I see where Tim's coming from. She is truly about the camera being on her. There's no doubt about it.
There's this thing that happens with some quote-unquote sex symbols where it actually feels very contrived. So she's on MTV in her underwear twerking, and thanks to her, we know what that term means. We act so aghast, or she's so sexy. It's like she's sort of just a normal-looking person. But because everything's presented, and also there's the titillation of she was this child star, but now she's embraced her sexuality and she's a woman. It's like just a person that you see a dime a dozen on Ocean City, Maryland, just sort of walking around in somewhat flattering bathing suits, but not really. It wasn't, oh my God, she's in such amazing shape, she has this incredible figure, or whatever. It's like, no, she's just sort of pandering to us, and it felt like we were being fed, oh no, she's sexy now, she's sexy now, she's sexy now. It's like, no, she isn't. She's just sort of a person.
No, I was just going to say, she's definitely her own brand. Yeah.
We're being told to feel a certain way about her that doesn't really jibe with reality. But what I will say is I have my Shazam open on my phone, and on there is her song, Midnight Sky, because I heard it in wherever, at whatever restaurant or store I was in. I heard it over the PA, and I thought it sounded pretty good, and I checked it out. I was like, oh, this song that she sang is good enough that I actually stopped what I was doing, pulled out my phone, opened Shazam to see what song it was. That says a little something.
Feels like her talent might be overshadowed by her quest for publicity. I don't know, or just being a star. Yeah, I don't know. It's at odds with each other, because I do believe she's truly a music fan and she's truly driven by music, but it seems to interfere with her quest to be on camera all the time, I guess. I don't know. Why else do you agree to hosting shows, and why else do you do things that people are going to be up in arms about? But I think, Tim, that's a very interesting choice.
Yeah, I mean, it's not to say, like, when I look at these top 10 chart songs that she had, I mean, I like the songs, but there's just, there's something about her personality. Or did she get booed on a Saturday Night Live once for lip syncing or something?
That was Ashley Simpson.
Oh, Ashley Simpson. So there's just something about her personality where, like, you're right. I like the songs. If I'm having a bad day at the office, I definitely would pop one on just to lift my mood a little bit. But you're right. There's just something about her personality where it just makes me want to tune out, where I'm like, listen, I've seen enough people go down this road. I just don't need to watch another car wreck in progress, or whatever she's going to do to keep going on camera. And
it's not sustainable, right? Because you're going to run out of tricks that you pull out of your bag. but she does have talent. So she could be very interesting 15 years from now, 20 years from now, because like I said, I think she's clearly driven by music.
Tim, you mentioned Ashley Simpson. Ashley Simpson is Miley Cyrus with no talent.
oh, 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 ah.
We're disagreeing about Ashley Simpson's talent?
No.
I'm just.
We're basking in the burn. Right?
Ashley Simpson, who had no interest in any of that world,
Yeah,
had no innate ability, but because of how much of a cultural focus was on Jessica Simpson at the time, because that was at the peak of the Newlyweds and her being married to Nick Lachey and is it Chicken or Fish? They said, okay, let's get her into a recording studio. Let's tweak the vocals as much as we can. Let's put her in a couple movies.
she was an actress first.
Barely.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying she was good, but yeah.
So it's like, let's put all the same machinery behind her big sister, who had, say what you will about Jessica Simpson, she did have some charisma, was a very attractive woman, and actually had some singing ability. Put all that machinery behind someone without any singing ability, without any interest in music. She'd be like an attractive girl in The Office, but not movie star good looks. Put that same machinery behind her, and it all fell apart. And, you know, you talked about her lip syncing on SNL. It's because she couldn't sing the song. She couldn't sing her own song.
No.
And they had an interview about it where she's like, oh, well, I had, and one of her excuses was she had modules on her vocal cords. What it was recommended is they tuned down all of her music so it would be better fit in her actual vocal range. And they said, oh, you should also start taking vocal lessons. It's like, you're not taking vocal lessons? You're a touring musician.
Right.
You should know how to sing. It just showed there was no dedication to music. There was no innate ability. There was nothing there.
There was no honor. There was no honor among thieves. She threw her band under the bus too about that too, didn't she?
Yeah, she said they started playing on the wrong music. She came up with 5 different excuses, trying to find one that would stick.
None of them taking ownership for it herself.
Really, the excuse would be is like, I'm not very good at this and I needed help. So it's like, yeah, I can see that's a hard one to throw out there.
Well, yeah. Tough to say how that would have ended up if she did. It certainly didn't work out as well as she hoped with the path she did choose. But yeah, Miley Cyrus is an interesting choice. I would compare that to, what's the dude that was in that boy band from England? You and I commented on him doing
Ricky Williams?
No, he did Sledgehammer on Howard Stern's show.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so old, I can't think of his name.
Harry Styles.
Harry Styles.
Oh, Harry Styles.
I would compare it to that because I didn't get it. I'm like, okay, he's a star because he was in a boy band. He was, he's got 30 producers. Just nothing about him that I took any note whatsoever of his music until I saw him play live on Howard Stern's show. And it's the same thing with Miley Cyrus. I took no note of her until I saw her do something very authentic in her backyard playing live. When Harry Styles did Sledgehammer, not only did I say, oh my gosh, I forgot how fantastic this song was, but the fact that this dude pulled it off. And he obviously wanted to honor Peter Gabriel and wanted to honor that song.
Yeah, he loved this song. He loved the original production. He appreciated the original production.
He's a talented dude. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to start listening when the songs come on. I'm not going to say I'm enjoying him. I've never streamed an album of his, or Miley Cyrus for that matter. But I do see that they're purely driven by music, or they are driven by music, whether it's 100% or not. I don't know. He's another one. Should he be as big as he is if he wasn't singing Watermelon Sugar and what that means, right?
He showed up at the end of Eternals. Olivia Wilde casted him in...
Oh, that's right. Now he's an actor. Oh, yeah. Jeez, everybody's an actor.
His videos are very visually interesting and all that. So he might have the mix. Superstars have the mix of talent, charisma. Prince did a handful of movies, one of which was successful. Because Prince, aside from being a really good musician, just had that it factor, that talent, charisma. It'll be interesting to see Bon Jovi. We forget John Bon Jovi did 3 or 4 movies.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I've said it before on your show before. We are so unrelenting, the American or the public in general. I can't speak for the rest of the world. I'm sorry. But we are terrible. We don't allow people to have multiple interests or hobbies, right? We get so mad when a musician becomes an actor and an actor becomes a musician, or heaven forbid they pick up a paintbrush. We give them no credit whatsoever. We won't even give them a chance. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why that is, but
well, often because they're terrible at it.
Yeah, usually because they're terrible at it. Bruce Willis,
or the other way. Mick Jagger acted in a few movies and he's awful.
You know, Mick Jagger doesn't aspire to be a movie star, right? I think Harry Styles does, and probably Miley Cyrus, and probably Lana Del Rey. Not because of their love for acting, but their quest for fame.
Shawn, for you said someone who should be bigger. Joseph Arthur should be bigger. Somebody who, you're dancing around it with Harry Styles, but somebody who they became really big and you stop.
You'll have to come back. I haven't given it much thought. I was so focused on trying to come up with the first topic. I'm sorry.
I'll give 2. One is somebody I really like, but they got way bigger than they ever deserved based on ability. And the second is somebody who I am notorious for despising.
Justin Timberlake.
Justin Timberlake.
What was the other one, Madonna?
No! I remember in the early 2000s, this TV show Dark Angel, and seeing Jessica Alba for the first time. And she was so cute and had such screen presence. And then I found out there was the same girl that was in Idle Hands, which was a little-known comedic horror movie that had Seth Green.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Okay, yeah.
And I remember seeing Jessica Alba and just walking. She didn't actually say a lot in the trailer, but she's just walking. It's like, oh my God, that's one of the most beautiful human beings I've ever seen in my life. I was like all in on Jessica Alba. I was like, she's beautiful and she has screen presence and charisma. And then seeing her in movies, I was like, oh, she's terrible. And never worked on her craft. And then also Hollywood had no idea to do with this glamorous, great-looking actress of Latin descent. So then her biggest movies were the Fantastic Four films, where it's like, let's give her blue contacts and either dye her hair blonde or give her a crappy blonde wig. And it's like, oh, not only is she not very talented, but Hollywood has no idea you can work around that. Arnold Schwarzenegger had an amazing career with people working around his weaknesses, finding ways to give him roles that made use of his natural charisma and his way to be sort of being approachable while still being built like Arnold Schwarzenegger. They had no idea how to make that happen with Jessica Alba, so she ended up being way out of her depth, where she just wasn't believable in any sort of acting, or stuff where they was like, let's whittle away everything interesting about her. Tim, do you have any Jessica Alba thoughts?
Maybe you're right. She might be one of the first victims where she just was eye candy for lots of people. And then the debate of her acting skills goes in any direction, because what is the Jessica Alba stuff that I feel like she's definitely known for? More like being in Machete and that one comic book,
Sin City.
Sin City. She's in the Sin Cities.
And she had so little to do in Sin City, and she was still terrible at it.
I know she's tried to do more smaller stuff, get something that way. But you're right. She's somebody who, yeah, maybe she's like a pre-Scarlett Johansson. They look attractive, but the difference is that maybe Scarlett Johansson can actually act and got projects that she can handle. And Scarlett Johansson also, from what you guys say, can rock out on an album or two.
Well, I didn't say that, but she put out some albums. A little bit of Bruce Willis there.
That did not make your speakers burst into flames. How about that?
Nice.
Scarlett Johansson, and I've listened to the first album she did with Pete Yorn called The Breakup. First off, they produced the hell out of it. The songs were fine because they were well-written songs. She is a perfectly capable karaoke singer, but that was a vanity project. She wasn't terrible. She's a B- C+ singer.
We bought the soundtracks to sing and sing to because of her. You know, she had good songs on those. So my kids, we rock out in the car to those. Not ashamed. She's got the pipes.
Shawn, do you have Jessica Alba thoughts?
Jessica Alba. This is my weakness. I could not debate or intelligently talk about actors or actresses, unfortunately. I'm a one-trick pony. Sorry. But I have no strong feelings one way or another.
Well, that's fine. Let's talk music. And what I will say, Justin Timberlake hasn't had an album out in years. It sort of sounds like he got out while the getting was good, where his last album sold pretty well, but everybody hated it. And then he stopped making music.
Why did he stop making music? Did he ever say?
I don't know that he has said.
He wants to be an actor.
I don't know what he wants to be. I think he's just happy being Justin Timberlake. He's really rich, but his last major song was a song that he did for the Trolls soundtrack, Can't Stop the Feeling, which I'm on record saying, not a bad song.
Yeah, we like it.
His last album was 2018's Man of the Woods, which people hated. It got really bad reviews. Some of the music was sort of tone deaf. My thing with Justin Timberlake, sort of similar to Miley Cyrus, first off, NSYNC broke up and they were very smart because he left that group before they became New Kids on the Block trying to be tough. They sort of left at their peak. He left that band at their peak. The first video he did for that was for a really crappy song called Cry Me a River.
Oh, God. That
Garbage song.
song is terrible.
That was a lousy song that got a lot of buzz because he had a Britney Spears lookalike in the video.
Yeah.
And it was all about him. Like, was this about her cheating on him? So he used the publicity about that relationship without actually saying anything about it.
He never denied it.
Yeah, he never denied it, never said anything, was very coy, and used that publicity to prop up a crap song. And he did that a lot. He would play all the right publicity games. He'd be smiling and a nice guy while ripping off Janet Jackson's top during the Super Bowl. Would have provocative song titles. It's like, oh, what does Sexy Back mean? Sexy Back means it's a crap song because that song is lousy.
It's just a lot of random things put together. It's not even, doesn't even feel cohesive. Yeah.
They would show him working out for a movie. He's like, oh, Justin Timberlake and his muscles. It's like he weighs $120. He's fit like every other young Hollywood guy is fit. And don't talk to me about how great a shape he's in. He looks like everybody else that age, especially in that industry.
Right.
And then he would beatbox and is like, oh my God, he sounds like every 12-year-old on my son's school bus.
I know.
I was like, he's so talented with his beatboxing. He sounds like a ninth grader who gets held back a lot during recess.
Not that I gave it much thought prior, but I'm sold. I agree. He's overrated, but maybe the rest of the world has caught up since nobody else is talking about him anymore but us.
There is an interesting thing where, listen, his last album was 4 to 5 years ago.
Justin Bieber. There's another one. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Justin apparently, just the name Justin is a tell. But it has been 4 or 5 years since his last album came out. and nobody cares. No, you don't hear any big. It's like, when's the next album come out? When's the next album? It's like, nobody cares. He's a celebrity. He's that sort of Brooke Shields. They're famous for like who knows why reason celebrity. Just sort of there. And it was the same with, his wife, Jessica Biel, same thing. She was very famous because she was in Seventh Heaven, but she was this girl in Seventh Heaven who decided to do a nude pictorial for Gear magazine. So she was edgy.
Yeah, right. She's far from Seventh Heaven. Right.
But then you realize, it's like, you know what? Yeah, she's an attractive girl like everyone else in Hollywood who hasn't had any successful TV shows or movies. They kept trying to prop her up into something, and it wasn't there. Now, Jessica Biel's, she did a crappy USA Network show for one season, and we're acting like it's a big deal. So, no, she's just sort of an actress without a lot of success who had a little bit of buzz because of nothing to do with her acting. To me, everything about Justin Timberlake is mediocre. Mediocre talent, mediocre charisma, mediocre everything. He just was really lucky. He was dating the most famous pop singer in the world at the exact right time. And then he was able to leverage that into, oh my God, the most famous pop singer in the world cheated on me. And I can make like really tantalizing music videos so that we can pick apart and say, hey, what's this about? What's he really saying? Well, what's he really saying is like, I need an interesting video because this song sucks.
Oh, man.
But I will say, and again, Can't Stop the Feeling, that's a good song. That is a good song. It's not that he's incapable of putting out good music. I'll give him all the credit in the world. He appreciates good music. He's a guy who likes music. It's just what he used to achieve his fame had nothing to do with that.
Writing a good song is not on his to-do list.
No.
It's not. It's not. It's just his to-do list has to be around fame and publicity and press. And yeah, it's probably the same thing with Miley Cyrus, actually, too, and to come to think of it, although she's capable of writing a good song, it's just not on her to-do list as frequent as hosting a TV show or doing a pictorial or whatever it is. I don't know anybody that's upset that Justin's not making music anymore. We kind of, the general public has moved on, I guess.
I'll be interested to see within 2-3 years he's going to put out another album, and will it get any buzz, or will it be so many of his contemporaries have taken extra shots at new music and didn't make a ripple?
Well, there's no money in it. It's very hard to make any money at it, so why do it?
Britney Spears, Katy Perry, Christina Aguilera have put out music in the last 2 years that nobody gave a crap about. Madonna has put out new music and nobody cared. You need to do something interesting. Now, Shawn, have you given thought? You've had a little bit of time here. A performer that they're big and you don't get it.
Oh, that was Justin Bieber, right? That's when I blurted that out. Yeah, it just came to me as you were talking about Timberlake. He's another one who has talent, I think, at his core, but somewhere along the way, he's always. I don't know. I don't know enough. He's just somebody I see. Like, why should I care about what he has to say when there's a microphone in front of him, whether he's singing or not? I just don't get it. I realize I'm old, but I really don't think there's a lot. I don't think there's a lot of substance. I don't think writing a good song is on his to-do list either. It's more about look at me and how can I find ways to force you to look at me, just like Miley Cyrus, just like Justin Timberlake. It's not authentic. We can see we're smarter than people give us credit for. The general public, us non-famous people, are smarter than you give us credit for. You're force-feeding us saccharin.
In 5 to 10 years, I think Justin Bieber will show up again, and he's going to put out an interesting song. And you alluded to this, the talent's there.
Yeah.
Once everything else sort of falls away, he'll sort of reemerge as an interesting singer-songwriter.
Be interesting. I don't see it. I think he can dig deep into the well, and there's nothing there.
Tim, do you have Bieber thoughts?
Are you the believer?
No. I just know the biggest story about him was maybe he came and did a concert here pre-pandemic in Prague, and the only story there was, I don't remember hearing anything about the concert and what he did, but I just remember that he wanted to hang out with a couple local girls, and there was a big story about them all having to sign non-disclosure agreements. For him to hang out with chicks, he had to get all legal, and they didn't run out and sell their stories. So
He can't do stuff then if they don't sign that.
I don't know. I've never seen the deal. I mean, I the transition from like cute boy singer, like you said, like in the boy band phase, like Justin Timberlake, to I'm all gangsta now because I got some tattoos.
I grew up on the street.
Canadian streets, for God's sakes. This is gangster Sesame Street.
I'm going to say all three of us, I think when we talk about the ones that we don't get it, let's be fair. They're not in our normal listening range. Maybe we should challenge ourselves, artists within our niche. I don't know if that's what you can call it. But, I mean, come on. Justin Bieber, maybe Miley Cyrus. I'll give you more credit than that just because it was entertaining to hear you talk about her. And then Justin Timberlake. It's easy pickings, but reach deep. Is there someone in the singer-songwriter range, which is, it seems like those are artists we gravitate to that you just don't get. And I'll give you an example for me because I just thought of this. Jane's Addiction. I've never got it. I've never understood why they would cheat anything. And I know that they're not together anymore, but people still reminisce and talk about Jane's Addiction like, oh my God, I can't even believe we make do with sliced bread when we got Jane's Addiction. That would be one example. And you know, now that I'm picking on everybody, Chili Peppers, I don't get it either. Right? I don't.
Hey man, let it out. Just heal, man. Just heal. Don't hold back.
I went from I have nothing to
everyone.
Right. But I mean, I feel like those two are more in my wheelhouse too. I do know enough to comment on. But so I wonder, for both of you guys, is there somebody that's not easy picking that is more in your wheelhouse where you're like, I just don't get it?
Oh, that's a hard one because over here in Prague, I'm at a mix of like a lot of weird European electronic pop. There's a lot of stuff in a lot of language where I don't even understand what the hell they're saying. I'm looking at some concerts and I'm like, wow, I'm only going to see one group that actually speaks in English here. So that's a little hard for me to comment because, there's a lot of stuff that's from the British bands where I just can't get up behind it. And maybe, like I said, maybe I'm not British enough or.
Well, I would say Lana Del Rey matches that for you, Tim. You should like Lana Del Rey.
Yeah, I would agree. That's sort of in that range that we. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah,
she's not Justin Bieber. She's going for 30-something, 40-something guys. She's supposed to be our sex symbol.
Yeah, she's supposed to be right. You did say very early on she's supposed to be for us, right?
I was just gonna say with Lana Del Rey. I mean, I have that first album and I like it, but then I think I saw like a later album video where the whole purpose of the video was she blew up a helicopter that was stalking her. So I'm just trying to figure out what the message there was for the paparazzi. Like, I'm armed, but
for me, somebody that I should like, and it's not like they're a superstar or anything, but I remember reading reviews breathlessly talking about Ryan Bingham, an alt-country Americana guy. And I was real deep into my Ryan Adams fandom. And he sounded like just the same sort of musician where it's country, but not so twangy that it would be a turnoff. I bought the album and I'm listening to it as like the music wasn't interesting. He has a good voice and some pretty good lyrics, but it turns out like the the structure of the music and everything else. It was like, this is some very basic, 1 2 1 2, then to the 4 guitar structure, or 1 4 1 4, then occasionally to the 5, and it's like, oh, there's nothing here. This is sort of nothing, and there's so many other performers that can do the same thing, but more interesting. One, I can say, somebody that I was supposed to be really into, that eventually I got into, and I broke Shawn's heart about this, because Shawn wanted me to love Wilco's Summer Teeth so bad.
Good, you're right. Yes. And the next several albums after that, I kept trying.
And it wasn't till the one with I'm Going to Break Your Heart.
Yankee Hotel Foxtrot.
Yeah, that was the one that finally is like, all right, there it is.
I didn't even know you liked that. Did you?
We talked about that 15 years ago, so you were happy.
All right.
I don't think Jeff Tweedy has an amazing voice. That's not his strength.
No, I don't think Jeff Tweedy thinks that either. Yeah.
It just took a while, and part of it was I really liked that album. And then I remember Pete Yorn, going back to Pete Yorn, this is a way to tie everything together. Pete Yorn talked about how he wrote the song Crystal Village, and he was accused of ripping off I forget who. He's like, man, I didn't rip that person off. I ripped off Wilco. And then it turns out that he was inspired by She's a Jar.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then I listened to She's a Jar, which was on Summer Teeth, but I think it was buried too deep, and I just didn't get into the album enough to like grasp onto that song. It took a long while for me to like get into Wilco. I remember Shawn's like, you gotta listen to Summer Teeth, and the next day he's like, hey, I listened to Summer Teeth. He's like, yeah, what'd you think? It's like, not for me. And you look like you were ready to cry.
I think it's so personal. It's just like what we said at the beginning, when Tim mentioned he had to judge us talking about Matthew Sweet versus Lemonheads.
Going back to that competition, we never finished it. We got through like one round of that best of the 90s. It was such a pain to put together. It's been like 4 years since we did the last one. Probably longer than that. And maybe one day I'll just like dust off that board, and we'll like just do like a speed round. It's like, all right, what's better, this Nevermind or Girlfriend? It's like, Girlfriend. All right, Brad, shut up.
I like that idea. I'd be down for that.
All right, guys, this has been awesome. We've been talking for a while.
Yes, people are going to sleep in my house.
This is the 8-year. This is going to come out on the 8-year anniversary of Cosmic Geppetto. I wanted to get you guys together for it. Thank you so much for doing this. Shawn, I need you to plug your pluggables.
I don't have anything to plug. You do this to me every time. I have a VR arcade, which can be found on Facebook and Instagram and the internet just by searching for Control V. CTRL, as in your keyboard, Control V.
Yeah, you don't have anything to plug. You're the only one actually with like a big thing, a business that you want to get people to get into.
Right. So Control V Plano. My wife and I recently opened a arcade in Plano about 5 months ago. Yeah, if you can believe that, it's been about 5 months. Virtual reality arcade. Definitely check us out if you're in the area or if you know somebody in the area.
Tim, what do you got to plug?
Nothing, man. I'm just still looking for a publisher for one of my picture book manuscripts. So if anybody has a publishing house and they need some up and coming author stuff, I'm still here.
Tell us about your picture book.
Basically, I have a picture book. I have a story written about a boy overcoming his fear of dogs. I worked with an editor on it, and the story's solid, and I worked on a good query for it, and it was my kids. We travel around Prague and we go to other places, and it was just inspired by this afternoon where where my children, we were out walking with some friends in a town, and these dogs just freaked out my kids. And Oliver and Lily are 7 and 5, and they were younger then, and they're over it now, but still at that time, the way they reacted and how they talked about it and expressed it to me really got to me as a parent. I thought I could come up with a story to help parents have that dialogue with their children about things that the kids are afraid of and how parents can help them. That's the story, and I'm hoping I can find somebody. So keep sending out letters. And
Yeah, I hope so. Keep at it. Keep at it. It sounds like a great read.
Yeah, we're all rooting for you, Tim. Keep us posted. And guys, this has been amazing. Thank you for being part of this for 8 years. We were all like fresh-faced and had fewer gray hairs. Some of us had more hair then than we do now. Honestly, for a change, I'm not talking about Shawn because I was like getting a bald spot. I was like, started shaving my hair down because it's getting a little unseemly.
I was impressed you put me in the fresh face bucket as well.
All right, guys, we're gonna have you both back. We still got quite a few episodes left of the show to go, and we're gonna do this again. That wraps episode 275. Big thanks to Shawn and Tim. They are two of the first people I spoke to when I decided to start this program, and I'm glad the three of us could talk. Also, big thanks to Mav. Really smart guy, and he's great to talk to. Next time on the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast, speaking of Mav, he joins me to talk about Kanye West. Yeah, no way that'll get weird. Until then, in the words of Jarve Harden,
see you in the funny pages.
Subscribe to the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever quality podcasts can be found. Rate and review us while there. Follow us on Twitter at Cosmic G-Pod, and we will follow you back. Unless you're a jerk. We don't follow jerks. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cosmic Geppetto. We love hearing your ideas for upcoming episodes. Email us at cosmicgeppetto@comcast.net.
I will always love you.
Dude, this sounds like Boston.